So we look at the next concept on how to load environment variables from env file. And what is this env file? So the env file is the file that contains all the properties that are needed by your application to start and run effectively. So normally when you create your project, or when you create your backend server project, there are some sensitive credentials that you don't want to expose it in your application. For example, let us say your application is running on what port, or maybe your application is connecting to which database. So you don't want to expose those credentials. So what we normally do, we make sure that we create a separate file called env file, where we can put all the sensitive information that is required by our application. For example, right now, if you want to connect your backend to your database, your backend needs to know about your database. It needs to know where the database is located. It needs to know what is the password to your database. It needs to know what is the username to your database. All right. So all this information, you need to make sure that you hide them somewhere so that they are not exposed in your code. All right. And what we do, we create a file called env file. Env is environment variables, and in that environment variables, we add all the environment variables that we need to add, and then we can now import them in our application file, and then we can use them. So let us create. So what we do is just you follow these simple steps in creating env file. Within your project, within your root folder, you're going to create a new file called env. Then in that file, you're going to add any properties that you want to add. It could be your server port, it could be your database credentials, it could be your third-party API credentials. For example, let's say you are connecting with M-Pesa, or you're connecting with GPT, chat GPT, and they're giving you some API keys. You want to make sure you're storing them in that file. Then after you configure them in that file, next what you do, you load that env file in your main file, which is the index.js. Then after that, you can now use that env files variables, and then you can now start and run your application. All right. So what do we do? I'll get this code snippet here, which demonstrates on how to load the env file. So allow me to remove this code and replace it with this. So I want to remove line 2 because now we are not connecting to database. We will see that later. And so what are we doing in the first 2 lines? You know, here we are importing Express library. In line 2, we are also importing .env library. You can see this is the library that we are installed here. So we are importing this library. And what is the function of that library? Is to help us. We say that it helps us to load. Where is it here? .env library, it helps us to load environment variables from env file. All right. So we make sure we import that library. Then in line 4, we are creating a symbol or setting up a symbol Express app. Then in line 6, line 7, now we are now using this library to load that file called env. And where is that file? We need to create that file here. So we come within the root folder and we create a new file, and we call it dot env, and then within this file now we can configure any properties that we want our application to use. So we can come here, instead of configuring the port here, we can add a variable here called port equals to 80 80. So this is the port where our application will run. All right, for now let us say we only have one environment variable, port. So we save that change, then we come back in the index.js, and on line 7 we are now loading. When we say .env.config, it's like we are importing whatever environment variables that are here into this index file by using this line of code here. Then on line 8 we are declaring a variable called port, and we are saying process.env.port. So we are saying that you go to env file and get a variable with the name port. So this is the variable we are referring to. So when it comes here, it will get this, it will fetch this value 8080, and then we are saying, or we are using the or operator, or if this value is not there, then assign this 8081 to this port variable. All right, so that's what we are doing on line 8. Then on line 9, allow me to remove this, it's not important for now. We're not creating a symbol, any API here. Then now on line 9, we are now listening our application. We make our application to listen on port 8081, whatever port that we have configured in this env file. So if it is 8081, then our application of course will run on 8081. Okay, so let's save these changes and see, it gives us an error, and I think it's because of this cache. May remove it, save again. So now it runs on port 8081, and you can see here it tells you .env is injecting env from environment, is injecting one environment variable from .env file. I don't know if you can see this line here, very important. So it tells you that this library called .env is injecting, or it is importing or loading one variable, which is this from env. So when you go to your env, you can see now we only have one variable called port, and this is what is being injected here. Then after injecting it, it now starts our application and makes it to listen on port 8081, I mean 8080. Suppose we did not define, or somehow we forgot to define that value from within the env, and then we come here and we say load. So when we say process.env.port, this code will now go here and try to find a variable called port, but it will not find it, and if it is not there, by default it will pick up this alternative value that we have provided here. So now when I save, you can see now it tells you it is injecting 0 variables from env, because in env now we don't have any variable configured. And now if there is no variable, if there is no any variable, then it will run our application on port 8081, which is the default port we have, the alternative port we have provided. Is that clear? So that's how we load environment variables from env file. So apart from this, we could add so many variables as we proceed. Later on, when we look at connection to database, all the database credentials, we will keep them in this file called env, and then we shall be able to access them in the code by loading them .env.config, and then accessing them using process.env and then the variable name port. Is that okay? So let me buy a new data. You can see it is depleted.